Christopher Columbus got it wrong. He sailed west from Spain in 1492 to cross the Atlantic, then mistakenly declared that the Caribbean islands he found were the shores of Asia.
Signor Christopher Columbus of Genoa had discovered the coast of India, and it was spoken of grandly. It was more divine than human to have found that way never before known to get to the Orient, from where the spices originate.
The English were convinced they had to send their own expedition west to get at these spices. 5 years after Columbus, Henry VII gazed toward the western horizon and decided there was not an English sailor capable of making such a trip. He had a talented Mediterranean navigator in mind.
Well-beloved John Cabot, citizen of Venice, is granted full and free authority to seek out, discover, and find whatsoever isles, countries, regions, or provinces of the heathen and infidels, in what part of the world soever they be, which before this time have been unknown to all Christians.
He was born Giovanni Caboto. But under the banners of the King of England, he sailed as John Cabot. He left Bristol on May 2nd, 1497, on a ship christened the Matthew. Cabot set a northerly course. A month later, he sighted land. New found land. The events were recorded by a Bristol merchant, John Day.
Cabot landed at only one spot on the mainland, very near the place where they first sighted. They disembarked there with a crucifix, raised banners with the arms of the Holy Father and those of the King of England. They found tall trees of the kinds masts are made. They found a trail that led inland. They saw a site where a fire had been made. They saw manure of animals. And they saw a stick, a half-yard long, pierced at both ends, carved and painted. And by such signs, they believed the land to be inhabited. And thus, following the shore, they saw two forms running on land, one after the other. But they couldn't tell if they were human beings or animals. Since, as he was with just a few people, he did not dare advance inland, beyond the shooting distance of a crossbow. And after that, taking fresh water, he returned to his ship.
John Cabot spent only a few hours on the shores of the New World. Back in Bristol, he was received as a hero. He had claimed new land for England, and he said there were so many fish in the waters off this newfound land that they could be caught with a basket lowered over the side of a boat. That was all the fishermen of Bristol needed to hear. It wasn't long before other fishermen joined in. From the Basque Country and Spain, Portugal and France, they found enough cod to feed all the stomachs of Europe. The next year, Cabot went back on a new expedition, but this time it ended in disaster.
He is believed to have found the new land nowhere but on the very bottom of the ocean, to which he is believed to have descended together with his ship, himself the victim of the self-same ocean, since after that voyage he was never seen again.
He had been sent to North America not for fish nor for people. He was charged by his king, Francois I, to find a trade passage through the continent to the Pacific and on to the Orient. Cartier left the French seaport of Saint-Malo and set a course for Newfoundland. Then through the Strait of Belle Isle, and then nothing. Cartier found just confusing shoreline, fog, and dead ends.
I am rather inclined to believe that this is the land God gave to Cain.
Cartier marked each new bay and promontory on his charts. Baie des Châteaux, Île de l'Assomption, Baie du Saint-Laurent. And then Cartier came upon men.
There are people on this coast whose bodies are fairly well formed, but they are wild and savage folk.
Cartier sent some of his men ashore, loaded with trade goods.
As soon as they saw us, they began making signs that they had come to barter with us, and held up some skins of small value with which they clothed themselves. We offered them some knives and other iron goods to give to their chief. They parted all they had to such an extent that they went back naked without anything on them. And they made signs to us that they would return on the morrow with more skins.
With winter approaching, Cartier would soon have to leave. Other than some new maps and encounters with natives, his expedition had revealed nothing. He was determined to come back in the spring, to pick up where he left off. So Cartier planted a cross to claim this land for France.
The chief was dressed in an old black bear skin. Pointing to the cross, he made us a long harangue, making a sign of the cross with his 2 fingers. And then he pointed to the land all around about, as if he wished to say that the region belonged to him, and we ought not to set up the cross without his permission.
Donnacona, chief of the Stadacona people. Cartier recognized an adversary when he saw one.
We held up an axe to him, pretending we would barter it for his skins. At this, he nodded assent, and little by little come near the side of our vessel, thinking he would have the axe. But one of our men who was in our dinghy caught hold of his canoe, and at once 2 or 3 more stepped down into it and made them come on board our vessel, at which they were greatly astonished.
Cartier had not only seized Donnacona, but his 2 sons as well, Domagaya and Tagnawagne.
We explained to them by signs that the cross had been set up to serve as a landmark and guidepost on coming into the harbor, and that we would soon come back and would bring them iron wares and other goods. We told him that we wished to take 2 of his sons away with us, and afterwards would bring them back again to that harbor.
Cartier dressed the sons in European clothes and told Donnacona that they would meet the King of France, then come back the following spring to act as his guides. Then Cartier could sail directly into the river and beyond, to the Orient. Paris, in the winter of 1534. Domagaya and Tagnoagne had found themselves at the height of the Renaissance, amidst dukes and duchesses, artists and scholars. Among them, a prominent clergyman, André Thevet. He was the king's cosmographer, a man of reason who explained the mysteries of the universe and the complexities of the New World.
The king was hoping that even though this country did not bring him much revenue, it would at least bring him immortal honor and the grace of God to have rescued these barbarous people from ignorance and to render it to the Christian church.
Thevet conjured a myth of a native North America. It was a godless, yet surprisingly peaceful place. He imagined a simple nobility, a people who lived an admirable existence, yet could be easily conquered.
They have neither cities, nor castles, nor machines of war like us.
Cartier managed to convince King Francois that it was worth sending him back on another expedition, back to Canada. Canada. It was what Tagnoagne and Domagaya called their father's village at Stadacona. Jacques Cartier added the name to his map. Before long, Domagaya and Tagnoagne were back at their father's fire, telling him of the things they had seen on the other side of the ocean. Donnacona didn't trust the French and now refused to help them. Cartier and his crew would have to continue upriver alone. No other European had ever made this journey into the interior. After sailing for 150 miles, they landed at a large island on October the 2nd, 1535.
We marched on, and about half a league thence, found the land began to be cultivated. It was fine land, with large fields covered with the corn of the country. And in the middle of these fields is situated and stands the village of Hochelaga, near and adjacent to a mountain, the slopes of which are fertile and cultivated, and from the top of which one can see for a long distance. We named this mountain Mont Royal.
Through the gates of Hochelaga, Cartier crossed into another civilization.
They have a plant, of which a large supply is collected in summer for the winter's consumption. After drying it in the sun, they crumble this plant into powder, which they place in one of the openings of a hollow instrument. And laying a live coal on top, suck at the other end to such an extent that they fill their bodies so full of smoke that it streams out of their mouths and nostrils as from a chimney.
Cartier was like an apparition to them, so strange he seemed divine.
At once, many sick persons, some blind, others with but one eye, others lame or impotent, and others again so extremely old that their eyelids hung down to their cheeks, were brought in and set down or laid out near me in order that I might lay my hands upon them, so that one would have thought Christ had come down to earth to heal them. But I'm more than ever of the opinion that these people will be easy to convert to our holy faith.
Cartier played the role of a healing man to find out how to continue on to the Orient. But he was desperately short of time. He had to leave soon or risk being frozen in until spring. Finally, Cartier was forced to make a run back to the Atlantic. But the ice caught his ships near Donnacona's stronghold at Stadacona. He and his men were not prepared for this. They began to succumb to scurvy.
The sickness broke out among us, accompanied by the most extraordinary symptoms. For some lost all their strength. Their legs became swollen and inflamed. And all had their mouths so tainted that the gums rotted away down to the roots of the teeth, which nearly fell out. The disease spread among the 3 ships to such an extent that in the middle of February, of the 110 men forming our company, there were not 10 in good health. I gave orders for all to pray and to make orisons, and had an image and figure of the Virgin Mary carried across the ice and snow and placed against a tree, and issued an order that on the following Sunday, Mass should be said at that spot, praying the Virgin to be good enough to ask her dear Son to have pity upon us. At that time, so many were down with the disease that we had almost lost hope of ever returning to France. When God, His infinite goodness and mercy, had pity upon us.
Mercy did come from Donnacona's sons. They boiled some cedar boughs to make a cloudy black elixir. Then they instructed Cartier to have his men drink it.
At once, I ordered a drink to be prepared for the sick man, but none of them would taste it. At length, 1 or 2 thought they would risk a trial, and as soon as they had drunk it, they felt better, which must clearly be ascribed to miraculous causes. For after drinking it 2 or 3 times, they recovered health and strength, and were cured of all the diseases they had ever had. "25 of Cartier's men were dead by the time the ice loosened its grip, and Cartier still had nothing to show his king. He would need something enticing to win another passage back to Canada. Something from Donnacona. Jacques Cartier had a plan. He would invite the chief and his sons to join him on his ship La Grande Hermine for the Feast of the Holy Cross. Eventually, cautiously, Donnacona accepted. Which pleased us, as we were in hopes of being able to capture them. They arrived about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and as soon as they came opposite to our ships, I went and greeted Donnacona, who likewise was friendly enough, but kept his eye constantly fixed on the wood, and was wonderfully uneasy. I begged him to come on board the ships, to eat and to drink. At this, I issued orders for the seizure of Donnacona, Tegnaugny, Domagaya. At nightfall, a large number of Donnacona's people came opposite our ships, the river between us. howling and crying like wolves all night long, calling out incessantly, Donnacona, Donnacona, in the hope of being able to speak to him. I gave orders for Donnacona to address them, and I told him to be of good cheer, for that after he had had an interview with the King of France, his master, he would be able, within 10 or 12 moons, to come back.
But Donnacona would never come back. He was taken to Europe and languished there. He tried vainly to get home, spinning tales of a land of riches called the Saginaw that lay beyond towering waterfalls and treacherous rapids. He told the cosmographer, André Thevet, that he would lead them to these riches, if only he could return to Canada.
The king of the country, called Donnacona, died in France, a good Christian, in the time of King Francois, spoke French very well, having lived there 4 years. I saw and spoke with him to be more certain of the singularities of his country. And he told me that his elders had told him that when a man came to earth, a new star was formed in the sky, which appeared in the sky to be the guide of this man. Whereas, on the contrary, when a man, woman, son, or daughter came to pass away and leave Canada, a star was lost in the sky, never to be seen again.